Hey, Kara Oosterhuis here with Real Agriculture. Welcome back to another Real Ag Live. We are excited to bring you some great conversations today. And our guest here is Ethan Wallace, who is a dairy farmer in Ontario. So we're continuing on with our farmer kind of Thursdays we got going on here. And I will throw it on over to Ethan here. How is it going today?
Good, good. We got temperatures dropped a little bit, so the snow is not as sloppy as it was the last couple of days, and cows are milking well, so really don't have any complaints.
That's awesome to hear. So tell me a bit about your operation. Where do you farm in Ontario?
So we farm in southwestern Ontario, Huron County, just outside the town, Seaforth. We milk not 82 cows, 85 cows, jerseys, and parents bought the farm from my grandparents in 1976. Joanna and I took over management about 5 years ago, and we'll take over 100% ownership on December 31st. Finally, doing the whole family transition thing. So we do farm about 300 acres, own 150, and most of it for feed for the cattle.
So you talk about jerseys. Now, I'm from Southern Alberta. I am familiar with Holsteins, and you're probably going to cringe. But can you tell us a bit about why you've chosen jerseys?
When I left for university in 1996, if I saw another cow again in my life, it would have been too soon. My parents weren't ready to retire, and our Holsteins had outgrown the stalls. Holsteins had been getting bigger and bigger, and we were running into a lot of stepped on teats and hoof and hock injuries. And mom was at an auction sale and bought a jersey, and she fit and she milked well, and it just made things easier. So in 98, while I was at Guelph, mom and dad dispersed the Holstein herd and bought in purebred jerseys from all over the province and continued to milk the jerseys because they fit and they worked well in our older tie stalls. In 2000, when Joanna and I got engaged, I came to realize it was the cows I missed. And in conversation with my parents and Joanna, decided that we did want to come back to the farm at some point. Mom and dad invested in a new dairy barn in 2001, moving from a tie stall barn to free stalls and a parlor system. I worked in the GTA Toronto area for 2.5 years, and mom and dad had struggled. We'd actually bought in disease when they made the switch, so they asked for Joanna and I to come home, and I came back and worked for a company in this area doing agronomy, and worked on the farm part time. When mom and dad made the decision to go to the new barn, I did a business plan for it, and our barn is 25% smaller. Our land base is over 25% smaller than we would have needed for Holsteins. And my mom is 5 foot nothing, and she is in the barn every day, or had been in the barn every day. Still would be if I let her. And so it was just easier for her with the smaller animals to work with the cattle, and then as aggravating as they are, they really grow on you. I don't know how I'd do it any other way now.
Absolutely. So jerseys, as you said, they're a bit of a different they're a different feat to take on for sure. Can you talk about the feed you use for them? Because it's different silage than what Holsteins use, correct?
Uh, Somewhat, yes. I feed them a little different because they don't have the body capacity that a Holstein does. The energy portion of the diet has to be more concentrated just so it fits. We do corn silage, oatlage, and then some dry hay and protein supplement pellets, balanced for our production. We're currently in the 30 kilos of milk at 5.5 fat, so we're running about 1.5 kilos of butter fat per cow per day out of our animals. And with the oatlage, we don't feed alfalfa silage like a lot of other farmers do. We feed a grass silage. So I take my winter wheat off and I go right back in and plant oats and barley, which I harvest in late September, early October into the pit silo. And then after our corn silage, I plant a cereal fall rye and chop it in May and then plant beans into it. So a lot of our feed comes from a second crop on our ground, which allows us to get more per acre out of the limited acres that we do have.
So we're getting lots of comments in here about the stockings in the background. That Joanna has done a very good job decorating for Christmas. But there's more to your house. Do you want to kind of tell us a story about what's behind you and how that has been moved?
So we live in the original log cabin to the farm. Mom and Dad have a deed at their place from the late 1830s, early 1840s, deeded with a pre-existing cabin and barn. So these four log walls have sat here since the late 1800s or early 1800s. When my grandparents bought it in the 40s, it sat on four large boulders. And one summer, my grandfather and my uncle jacked the house up, or my grandfather and my great uncle jacked the house up, pulled the rocks out, and used basically one of those big snow shovels, but behind a horse, and dug a basement under it, poured a foundation, and it sat here ever since. In the early 80s, it had insul brick on it, which is basically asphalt shingles that look like bricks nailed to the side of it. And my parents went to the local aluminum guy to get a price on putting aluminum siding on it. And he yelled at them. He said, "I will not sell you siding for your house." He says, "I know what that house is, and I will show you how to restore it." And over the course of the 80s and early 90s, Mom and Dad and my sister Melissa and I restored this house to what you see here now.
That's a really neat story. And I bet it's especially neat telling your kids that story as well going forward. Do they have any intentions of being on the farm? Are your kids involved in it?
My 116-year-old, he does the afternoon chores on the operation. His brother works for two different neighbors. Our daughter she's only 10, so she really doesn't know yet. Like I said, with my boys, they're a lot more like me than I'd like to admit. So I wouldn't be surprised it'll be after they graduate university before they show any interest in it. Neither one of them's real keen on going out to the barn. They do a good job when they're out there, but getting them out there is pulling teeth. And I think until you've gone away and done something else, you really don't have that love, that drive to come back. So hopefully one of them will want to, and we'll do a succession like my parents did with us and help them out. And if not, we'll look for someone else that wants to start in the industry.
Yeah, that seems like the standard kind of farm kid quota. I know when I left my small town, I was like, now I am not coming back. And yeah, now I live 2.5 miles down the road from my parents. So we are back. So we got a question here from Lindsay, and she says, "What diseases did you buy in, and how are you managing it?"
So we bought in Yonis, which is similar to chronic wasting in elk. Basically, it's a hardening of the small intestinal wall, and they can't absorb nutrients. It's passed on immediately at birth from fecal matter in the area. So what we do is all calves are pulled as soon as they're found and cleaned. Colostrum management. We do make sure before any colostrum is collected that the udder is sanitized and cleaned before we collect that colostrum to feed to the calf. And then any animal that's tested, so all our animals are tested before they calve to see whether they're Yonis positive. And as soon as an animal is Yonis positive, if she's a really good cow, we'll switch her to a beef program and calve her in a different area. If she's an average cow, it will be her last lactation.
So what does it actually do to the milk? Why for somebody who's maybe not familiar with yonis, why can't you do anything?
So it doesn't reduce the quality of milk at all. What it does is it severely shortens the lifespan of the animal. So um, people have compared it to Crohn's and colitis in humans, where it's diarrhea all the time, and they when they do start with the diarrhea, they shed rapidly. They can spread it to other young stock. From all the research to date, any animal that doesn't have it by 6 months of age won't get it. So it's only passed on in those real early months. So as long as we keep them segregated during the calving times so that they don't contaminate other calves, we can maintain utilizing them. But what happens is once they start down the path of the diarrhea, they lose body condition very rapidly, and to the point that they're basically starving. They can eat and eat and eat all day, but they don't absorb any nutrients. So once we see symptoms start to take hold, we're much better to move that animal than to allow her to suffer.
So is yonis fairly common across the board, or like how many people actually find out that they have yonis? Because I know a lot of people that just end up culling their animals. They see them sick. They don't necessarily look into why they are sick. Do you have any comment on that?
I'm probably going to get hate for this, but I don't think there's a dairy farm out there without it, with that doesn't have it. Like you said, a lot of people will, oh, that cow looks off. I'm over milk. Off she goes without testing for it. Um, we pushed very hard on the Jersey industry about 10 years ago, my parents, that to start a bunch of testing for yonis because of how it had adversely affected our herd. Um, a lot of people don't want to know. If you know you have it, then it hinders your ability to sell breeding stock. So a lot of people just they don't want to know if they have it, and that hurts people like us who went out and bought a whole bunch of animals because we bought it in. Um, is it getting more renowned? Yes. Are people testing more? Yes. Is it getting better? Yes. But to say that there's herds that will say they're test positive, and if you test them and they're negative, and then you see symptoms and you don't test that animal, you just color, you can maintain your test negative status knowing full well that that's probably what that animal had. So it's frustrating. Over the last 5 years of our purchased animals, we were running about 40% of our purchased animals tested positive within the first 3 years in our herd. And currently we're running less than 10% of our homebred animals because of the strict protocol we're on.
So how quickly does it spread, and how does it actually spread from cow to cow?
So it doesn't spread from cow to cow. It can only spread from cow to infant calf. So
Right.
it 90% of infections occur during the first 12 hours of life while that calf's gut is still wide open for immunoglobulin transfer. After that, it slows dramatically to the point that at about 6 months of age, they're no longer able to contract it.
Okay. So, shifting gears a bit here away from disease and maybe to something a little different. Lindsay's got a question again. What are the biggest barriers to accessing land where you farm?
Dollars. The land value in our area ranges from about 18,000 an acre for poor quality land to 23 to 25,000 an acre for high quality land. Um, we are in a high supply managed area. We are in a high hog area and a lot of cash crops too. So there's the demand for land in this area is huge, and hog and beef guys need it for manure management. Dairy guys need it for manure management. Cash croppers are trying to expand their land base. So there's a lot of people bidding on land all the time in our area. And it's for someone like me that's just taken over the operation, that land is way too expensive to justify at this point.
So you guys, for as far as animals go, you just have jerseys out there?
Yeah, we've got, like I said, we milk about 100 or 80. So we've got about 200 animals on the farm, all jerseys except for one pasture ornament horse that belongs to my lovely wife.
Pasture ornament. Um, so if you were to get into any other animal, what would it be?
I, I don't know. It would probably be a beef operation if we weren't in dairy, just because that's my experience. My experiences with the bovine and with feeding that ruminant system. So I would say it would probably be in a beef operation if we were to go a different direction.
So what kind of year did you guys actually have this year out there? What were some of the struggles, or I guess high points, if you want to go that way, that you guys dealt with?
We we had a wet spring followed by a dry summer. On our farm, we didn't have any accumulation of moisture from early June till the first week of August. Um, that first week of August, we got 8 inches though. So our corn, our silage corn that we took to yield just to get a yield on it, ran about 200 bushels. The neighbor's corn and right next door was 215. Our soybeans, even the stuff that we did after the fall rye, ran 70 bushels. So we had some spectacular yields this year. The wheat was a bit off because it flowered and filled the head during that dry spell. But as far as corn and beans were concerned, we had just fantastic yields. And we built a new a freestall barn 2 years ago, and I'm really seeing the benefits of it right now. So our cows milked like crazy all year. So we've been very, very blessed to have a pretty spectacular year right where we are.
So do you guys have any milking robots out there, or is it all you guys that do it?
So we milk with two Lely A4 robots that we put in 2013, and the jerseys are very OCD. They like everything the exact same way every time. And as hard as four different people milking in a parlor can try to do things the same, it's really tough. And those robots, they do every aspect of the prep and milking the exact same way every time. And the jerseys just really, really flourish on it. So we'll be 8 years in May that we've milked with milk and robots. And like I said, with the jerseys, I don't think I could dairy farm without them. So
Is that what originally made you look into it? Why, like now you see why you would keep it, but what made you look into robots?
we had three part-time students, high school kids, that were two of them were spectacular for different reasons. One of them did a good job but had to be monitored, and they all graduated the same year. So we lost all of them to post-secondary education to trade school at the same time. And at that point, as we looked at things, were we going to spend another 4 years trying to find three good kids to just lose them in another two or three? So we started investigating the robots, and when we got all the quotes in place, our payments were within $1,000 a year of what we were paying three part-time kids. So there were some other costs that come up. There were some other costs that went down, but at the end of the day, for $1,000 difference, we had two robots that were there all day, every day, and you know what, maybe once a month if I'm unlucky, maybe every 2 or 3 months if I'm lucky, the robot calls in the middle of the night. So my last nighttime phone call was a month and a half ago. Touch wood, because it'll happen tonight because I said it. But that I'll deal with those wake up calls for the convenience on everything else.
So Chris Moore has a question. I've been
No
ignoring most of
questions
Chris
from
Moore's
Chris Moore.
questions
None.
because
None
and
from
I
Chris Moore.
know I know this is a little bit of a I know there's a story behind this one. However, it is still a good question. How important is farm safety to you?
Very, very, very important. October 17th last year, we had a group of cattle get loose, and I headed down the road at 11 o'clock at night on the four-wheeler, and the cows came back and I didn't. Wound up rolling a four-wheeler doing 90 kilometers an hour down the road with no helmet on. Sat up in the ditch and didn't feel anything, thought I was good, and got up to walk home, and proceeded to realize that my leg was not how it was supposed to be. There were bones sticking out the side of my leg. Called my wife and told her that I had had an accident, that she needed to pick me up and take me to the hospital. Got to the hospital just before midnight. They did x-rays and kind of got my leg back where it was supposed to be, and then sent me to London for surgery the next day. From what I've been told by a lot of other people, I was very lucky that the bone did come out of the side of my leg, because that happened, they had to clean it, and that means surgery within 12 hours. I know several people that have had bad breaks like mine from farm accidents, from livestock, that sat in a hospital bed for a week or two waiting for a surgery spot because someone who was worse off needed that surgery bed first. So it was about 36 hours from the time I had my accident to the time I showed up back at the farm, and then it was 6 months before I could go back to work. I carry with me every day now a titanium rod, and several stainless steel screws that will remain in my leg for the rest of my life. But when I look at the accident and how bad it was, and think about how bad it could have been, and it was something I'd done 1,000 times: jump on the four-wheeler, slide down the road, check for the cattle, come on back. And that night, it didn't go the way it always goes, and it could have been my last night. And to look out at our operation and young family and think that one stupid mistake and I might not have been here. So it really changes your outlook on how you approach safety around the farm after living through something like that. And mine was minor to some of the accidents that I know people have gone through. So we all need to take that time to do maybe a little bit more thought before we jump ahead and do jobs that we've always done and always done it that way.
So I know you're a big proponent of mental health in general and being out on the farm. Can you talk a bit about, now you don't have to get into your experiences if you don't want to, but can you talk a bit about some of the struggles that are faced being out in a rural area?
So as farmers, we're very self-reliant and kind of live in our own bubble. And I mean, this pandemic really hit home for me. I didn't realize just how much I have to slide into town to talk to somebody. It's good that Joanna works from home right now, because I can just walk up to her office and talk to her. But we're alone in our thoughts. And I always used to say I'd go to the barn to get away from everything. The problem is you go to the barn and you're alone with your thoughts. And sometimes those thoughts aren't the greatest thoughts to be alone with. I've lost friends, acquaintances to mental health. And it's that fact that we're stuck in the middle of nowhere. I can't just walk across the hall to someone else's office to talk to them. And there's also this mentality in agriculture that just do it, just man up and do it. And sometimes that's just not how things go. That mentality that you're weak if you can't handle it really needs to change. And I think we've seen a lot of change. A bunch of us were talking earlier. There was a bunch of messages going on earlier today about a good friend of mine that lost her battle, and how she impacted all of us, and how her being a mental health advocate and then losing her kind of shocked a bunch of people. And hopefully a lot of good comes from that loss. Stuart Skinner's been doing a fantastic job about talking about his struggles and trying to open people's ideas up that maybe that I'm a farmer, I can do it all. I'll just work through it. Maybe isn't the best way to do things.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important that we say that too, because we all think it, but it's one of those things. I mean, I'm one of those people that I've always been like, I like to be alone as much as I'm a social person, but especially during the pandemic now, it's like I want to choose when I'm gonna be alone. I don't
Yes.
need, so that makes it very
Yeah, that's
difficult.
the
Is there
that's the big thing I've taken away from it all because I enjoy talking with people. I Lots of people tell me I like to hear myself talk, but I enjoy that group atmosphere. But there's certainly I enjoy being just me and the cows in the barn too. And when you're forced to just be you and the cows in the barn for extended periods of time and you don't have that break, that interaction with others, it can really, like I said, when you're stuck alone with your thoughts, sometimes they start to get away from you.
So, do you care to share any of your tips on what are some of the things you're doing when you find yourself get into a slump?
Well, one of the biggest things is I take a happy pill every day. I've been diagnosed and struggle with seasonally affected with depression, and for a long time it was that whole I'm broken. I'm not any more broken than someone with diabetes or someone with Parkinson's or like it's my brain doesn't make enough of a chemical, and if I have to take a pill to make sure I can function as a without those thoughts, then I'm going to take a pill. Just like someone with diabetes is going to take insulin so that they don't die. Well, that's a big start for me. The other huge thing is a supportive family and supportive friend group. As much as I chirp Mr. Moore, to have those friends that when you're down, you can just say one thing and they know it, and the phone rings, right? And
Mm.
Joanna and the support structure from my family and her family, and from her and our kids, and that it's that talking about it in that support structure, friend group that really, I mean, as much as my medication helps me deal with it, so does that. And for those people that don't want to go the medication route, it's a start. Start talking, start opening up, because there's a lot more people out there go through what you're going through than you really think. And that needs to be said more often too.
Absolutely, and it's more of just a lot of people like I too am on medication as well. I have been diagnosed with clinical anxiety and depression, and I get all the time, well, you look so happy. And I think we need to recognize that it's not so much of what you look like, that we can talk about it. And like you said, that's so important. That I've always said that too. I used to battle with parts of my family that would say, well, why are you taking medication? And it's like, well, you wouldn't question if my thyroid wasn't working, so I'm not getting enough in my brain. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for saying that.
People
Is
have to
there
remember that Robin Williams took his life, right? Robin Williams, one of the
yeah,
greatest comedic entertainers of all time, struggled and ended his own life. So it doesn't matter how happy people look or how sad people look. It unless you talk about it, nobody will know, and we just have to do a better job talking about it.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, is there anything else you would like to add on the mental health side or on dairy in general? Is there anything you feel like you would just like to tell farmers that are listening right now?
uh just just be you. Just do what makes you happy. We all get caught in this bubble of keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak. Got to be bigger, got to be the shiny combine, the just do you. And that it, that's all that we really need to do. Be your best you and just do you.
Speaking of which, though, I did hear you have a shiny versatile out there, which I hear is pretty uncommon for the area. So
Yeah, there's lots of green paint in my neighborhood, so the versatile sure stands out.
That's awesome. Okay, thank you very much, Ethan. We are out of time. It was great to have you guys, or to have you on, and I appreciate you opening up and just being you. We need more people like that.
Thanks very much, Kara.
And thank you to everyone who tuned in today. It was another great conversation. Tomorrow, I will be back in the host seat again for RealAg Live. So be sure to tune in. And if you're looking for some more content today, RealAg Live will be on at RealAg Radio will be on at 2:30 Mountain or 4:30 Eastern on Rural Radio 147 on SiriusXM. So be sure to tune in, and of course, come to realagriculture.com for all our latest content, and we are here for you. So thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon.